Hello, and welcome to the podcast Self Care with Dr. Di. Today's episode features a special guest, mental health therapist Summer Ahmed. Summer is a licensed clinical social worker who is trained in multiple treatment modalities and practices in Kingsport, Tennessee. She is passionate about helping clients with mental health wellness. Summer has a wealth of knowledge to share with our listeners today. Welcome, Summer, and thank you so much for being here. Please introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, my name is Summer Ahmed. Heather was saying, I'm located in Kingsport. My specialty really consists with mindfulness, so doing some mindfulness-based stress reduction. I am an EMDR trained therapist, and I try to incorporate a lot of holistic practices within the work that I do. I also see teenagers and up, and really enjoy working with the LGBTQ community.
That's great, Summer. Thank you so much. Also, tell our listeners how you work with ETSU.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So I'm actually from Florida originally. And so when I moved up and I did an online program, I never really got to go to ETSU or anything like that. And so as I did my internship at Camelot, well, now it's known as Claire Vita, my mentor, Ashley Stewart, she had sent me a Facebook image that had like kind of like the advertisement of external field supervisors needed for the School of Social Work at ETSU. And so I started that last year. And so essentially my role is I'm kind of like a volunteer supervisor for students that are at an intern site, but they don't have a social worker on site. So essentially, we meet either in person or on Zoom once a week, and I provide that social work supervision for them. And I've been primarily seeing master's students, so this is my second year going into it. So that's essentially my role within ETSU.
And we are so thankful to have you. So thank you so much for being an external field supervisor for our students. It's wonderful to have someone like you that's so well trained in the mental health field, especially here in Kingsport, Tennessee. Not only do you support your clients, but you also play an essential role in providing that supervision for our students at ETSU. So that's invaluable for both their education and professional growth. Given your experience and expertise, I'm especially curious about your perspective on self-care. It's such an important area, especially in mental health work. I'd love to hear how you first encountered the concept of self-care and how it became a part of your practice.
Yes, that's a great question. I feel like there's been a huge mental health push within even like the last 5 years. And so going into my program when I started as an MSW student, you take your courses, you do your classes, you do your book learning, but sometimes after you graduate, sometimes it's hard to click in like, okay, I'm a human as well. I need to take care of myself. So in a sense, like while you're in school and like learning your interventions to utilize, I got a general sense of self-care and like learning the importance of that for clients. But I don't think I really firsthand understood the importance of it once I was actually in the field and really working. And so a little bit after COVID, I had found myself just really extremely burnt out, essentially just kind of like going home and going to work, going into that kind of cycle. And I had realized, what am I doing outside of all this? What am I doing outside of the work that I do with clients? What am I doing outside of my Netflix binges? You know what I'm saying? And so I kind of realized I need something outside of this. And so that's really when I started getting more involved with self-care and really just the importance of taking care of ourselves outside of our like focused things in life.
Yes, I often say self-care has to be an intentional and purposeful
Yes.
act. So it's something you have to be very mindful about. And on that note, let's go ahead and dive into some self-care strategies. We all know that working in mental health, whether you're a provider or student, can be incredibly rewarding, but as you mentioned, it's very emotionally taxing. That's why
Hmm.
self-care is so essential, and not just for clients, but for ourselves as well. So, share some of your wisdom about self-care with our listeners.
Yes. I think with my self-care journey on top of like my training and everything, I think the biggest thing that I've learned and I try to teach clients about is balance. So we forget about that all the time. You know, when we're in the rat race of like going to work or really focusing on the grind, we forget that there are really important things outside of that. Again, like I said before, I kind of learned that firsthand experience. And as I've been practicing as a human slash clinician, I've been able to have that firsthand experience of the importance of balance to teach my clients. And so there's a really helpful tool that I love to teach clients about. It's called the Seven Healthy Mind Platter. Essentially, this was developed by Dr. Dan Siegel. Essentially, he's just like the mental health mindfulness guy, super amazing, does a lot of neuroscience work, so I highly recommend looking more into his resources, because he has so much great information. But essentially what he talks about with the seven healthy mind platter, we have seven different categories, and let's see if I remember all of them. So we have our focus time, our do nothing time, our time in, physical time, connection time, sleep, and play.
Yeah.
Something that I found that a lot of clients participate in, I don't know if you've had this experience, but I find clients really working on our focus time or do nothing time. So again, that focus time is really like going to work, going to school, kind of like, again, doing like that normal cycle of life things that we need to do. Or our do nothing time when we veg out, where we relax, where we really just don't focus on anything. And I don't think people realize the importance of all these different categories, especially as we are getting so stuck in the cycle of life. Something that I found that a lot of clients don't really prioritize as much, or sometimes we just don't naturally think, like we don't think that this is important, especially as we get older, is the essentialness of play. And that's something I've learned firsthand too in my own experiences. So a lot of the work that I do is especially when I talk about self-care, is talking about this structure and asking my clients, how are we being playful? Have we talked to our friends, right? Are we getting enough sleep? And again, a lot of that does connect with like our physical needs too, but sometimes we don't really do like the experiential playfulness aspects of things. And so that's something I talk a lot about with my clients, is how are we really taking care of the inner child within us? So that's essentially a big part of what I do. And again, incorporating a lot of mindfulness skills. A lot of times when I talk to clients, they have never used a mindfulness skill. And so that's something I really work on too, whether it's going through like some different polyvagal techniques, going through some grounding exercises. But the way that I really teach mindfulness is essentially noticing to the moment as it's happening. So, like, we are talking right now, right? So, me focusing as we're talking is like, okay, I'm really focusing on the words that I'm saying out loud. I'm noticing the screen in front of me. I'm noticing, like, okay, am I speaking too loudly? Am I speaking too softly? Versus like the autopilot. And sometimes when we get into that autopilot, maybe I'm just kind of like rambling in that sense, and we're not really noticing the moment. So that's the way that I teach it. So I either use a lot of like really structured techniques, or even going really slow and asking ourselves, how are we noticing? So sometimes I'll have clients sit in the room with me and I'll do a simple body scan, but instead of, going really quickly, okay, how's our head, neck, chest, da da da. I'll make them close their eyes, really practice that introspective work. And sometimes, we'll spend like 2 minutes just noticing, okay, how is our head feeling? And sometimes as we move on to certain parts, I'll say, okay, why don't you laser focus on your left hand now? Don't focus on anything else, focus on the left. And then let's go to the right hand. So essentially, it's trying to step within ourselves in this like busy society that we're in. And I know that was a lot. So essentially, using the seven healthy mind platter while also incorporating a lot of integral skills.
That's such helpful information, especially to our listeners. If you do not have a self-care routine, I definitely highly suggest that you look at Dan Siegel's
Mm-hmm.
information so that you become aware. Awareness is the first step. It's just
Yes.
becoming aware of maybe things that you struggle with or things that you're not doing. And so that awareness is very important. Self care is not a one size fits all. We all are unique and different, so our plans have to be individualized. And we've got to practice self care strategies with that intention and purpose. And
Mm-hmm.
we have to set that time aside to do things that help us relieve stress and recharge our battery. One more thing before I let you go. Can you share maybe with some of our listeners who are new to self-care, or maybe some of our listeners who are thinking right now, man, I really haven't been practicing like I should. What would be maybe a starting point for them? Something small, a tip, something simple that can get them back on track.
Yes, that's a really great question. I think when we think about self-care, it's important to nourish ourselves. Sometimes it's not just checking off the boxes. So earlier when I mentioned the intention of how we do things, that kind of goes with like, okay, are we checking a box off or are we actually being purposeful? Are we nourishing ourselves? So I really encourage clients to slow down and ask yourself, okay, am I getting enough sleep? Am I doing mindfulness? Have I connected with someone today? And again, that tool can be really helpful, but maybe even going through that list and asking myself, okay, what is a manageable within my window of tolerance thing that I can achieve today? And with a lot of these things, there can be a big spectrum to it. So, for example, like with playtime, right? We can do a simple, okay, I'm just gonna do some coloring today, right? Or maybe we go to the park or we do a cartwheel, whatever that looks like. So my encouragement is like, okay, let's go through our categories and ask ourselves, what is one thing that's within my window of tolerance that I can do today? And starting from there.
And as you were talking, I was thinking a lot after you are aware, a lot is about reflecting. So
Yes.
staying in the present moment and just reflect. And every person knows when they start feeling stressed out. I mean, you start feeling that lump in your throat or your heart starts beating faster. You know when that stress or anxiety hits. And that's when you can train yourself to recognize those symptoms so that you can kind of stop and say, okay, I recognize this is going on. I need to take a couple deep breaths. I need to just be in the
Hmm.
present moment and slow down. So, reflection is really good on being able to hone in and develop your skills on what you need to do. I could continue talking to you for a long time. So, but we'll end it here. Thank you again, Summer, for sharing this insightful and life-changing information with our audience. It's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I hope some of our listeners will reach out to you for extra support and guidance in whatever area they want to improve. So if you would like to contact Summer, you can reach her at 423 218 9214 to discuss your options. Again, please like and subscribe our YouTube channel to get updates with new podcasts. We have several special guests who will be joining us soon. I hope this podcast inspires you to reflect on your self care practices. So take care and be blessed.